If they don't call it QE, you just have to look at the Fed's balance sheet and you can see that the asset side is going up.
Even gold at 4,000, 5,000, or 6,000 when Egon bought it at 300. But even today, it's still a fairly priced, and it's certainly a fire sale price right now, because as we see it, the direction of gold's going to go multiples higher than it is right now. Excuse me. And so, I wish I could have bought it at 300 myself, but I'll still take it at 4,000 because I see it going to 12, 15, 20, 25,000. That too is not sensational, but it's important if you're an investor in gold for the long term, not a trader, because I don't speak to traders, not because I don't believe in it. It's just a very different mindset and it's a very different audience, and I'm not much help to them. But for those who understand history and these flows, whether you buy gold at $4,000 or $300 or $1,800 or $6,000, in the near future, you're going to be very glad you did, because gold isn't really going up.
Global fiat currencies are deteriorating under mounting sovereign deficits as central banks quietly replace foreign paper assets with physical bullion reserves. This ongoing structural shift signals a historic departure from unbacked sovereign debt across the international monetary framework. Financial analyst Mario Innecco joins macro strategist and fund manager Matthew Piepenburg, who illustrates why current precious metal valuations represent an extraordinary fire sale opportunity. Rather than a temporary commodity rally, current gold price action reflects the relentless debasement of paper currencies as central bank balance sheets continue expanding. Looking at long-term macroeconomic debt cycles, gold is projected to climb dramatically to targets of 12,000, 15,000, 20,000, or even $25,000 per ounce. This structural repricing underscores the global retreat from unbacked fiat instruments. For disciplined long-term wealth allocators focused on physical balance sheet protection rather than short-term trading, accumulating allocated bullion remains the primary defense against systemic monetary erosion. If you found this analysis helpful, make sure to hit that like button, share it with fellow investors who follow gold and silver, and subscribe so you don't miss the next big update.
We're seeing obvious cracks in the bond market, as evidenced by the yields, all happening at a time where our debt levels are spiking, our yields are spiking, and we're in a conflict or war that we don't appear to be winning in Iran, and the world is dumping U.S. treasuries at a fast pace and buying gold at a much faster pace. Their central banks now hold more gold than U.S. treasuries. All of these things are no coincidence to me, Mario, because all of it goes back to the fact that we've mismanaged our debt, that we're in a massive bubble in credit and stocks, and that Japanese carry trade is just one example of another thing breaking, like the petrodollar, like the U.S. Treasury hegemony, like the stock market over valuations. These are all, like I said, in 30 years, I've never seen such a convergence of so many negative signals. We're like that cartoon character that's going over a cliff and its legs are spinning and it's still there. It's still there, but it's heading south. And not here to time it. Berkshire Hathaway isn't here to time it. We're just going to get out of its way. And we're going to go to an asset that will perform much better in a crisis than stocks, and that will hold its value better than a currency that's backed by nothing. And that's why precious metals are such an obvious fat pitch to us. And you mentioned the 2000, the end of that NASDAQ bubble. That's when Egon von Greyerz, my partner, started buying gold at $300 an ounce. And everyone laughed at him and when he was recommending it. And he bought a great deal of it at $300. And look where the gold price is today. That's not to say I told you so. It's just to see and understand the history of these capital flows and the history of this debasement. And even gold at 4,000, 5,000, or 6,000 when Egon bought it at 300. But even today, it's still a fairly priced, and it's certainly a fire sale price right now, because as we see it, the direction of gold's going to go multiples higher than it is right now. Excuse me. And so, I wish I could have bought it at 300 myself, but I'll still take it at 4,000 because I see it going to 12, 15, 20, 25,000. That too is not sensational, but it's important if you're an investor in gold for the long term, not a trader, because I don't speak to traders, not because I don't believe in it. It's just a very different mindset and it's a very different audience, and I'm not much help to them. But for those who understand history and these flows, whether you buy gold at $4,000 or $300 or $1,800 or $6,000, in the near future, you're going to be very glad you did, because gold isn't really going up. It's just that paper currencies are being debased, and they're going to be debased at a much faster pace. And the governments and the central banks try to hide it. The BIS, the Eastern central banks, they're all talking about gold and silver now because that is the direction of the hockey puck.
I agree with you about the new system where gold becomes the settlement asset
Mhm.
because what we've had for 55 years is an aberration because you can't
Yep.
settle debt with more debt. So actually makes sense the Chinese are moving that way. And
Yep.
talking about 2022 and the trigger for these countries moving into gold, which was the Ukraine-Russian
Hmm.
war.
Hmm.
It looks like we might have another trigger for the switch from London, New York gold
Hmm.
market to, let's say,
Hmm.
Hong Kong and China.
Yep.
And I don't think, Matthew, that von Greyer's gold would confiscate their client's gold and give it to another client. So
No.
yeah, what I'm trying to say here, we saw recently the Bank of England
Hmm.
basically let the U.S. take Venezuela's gold, 31 tons.
Yep.
I'm sure maybe they'll put that in Fort Knox, and because they might need it. So yeah,
Yep.
could you talk about that?
Yeah, that's another very important, just like 2022 was a watershed moment that very few people were allowed to understand or that was discussed. I certainly wasn't alone in seeing this. From Jim Rickards to Lou Groman to Grant Williams, we all said this is a watershed moment. You just weaponize the neutral reserve asset. We're going to lose demand for our dollar at our treasury now, and there's going to be a shift. And what happened over this summer, really starting in July, is Hong Kong and Shanghai have a clearing settlement system for gold that is based on physical, not paper claims. And again, for those that are new to gold, many know this already, obviously, but some don't. Since the 1970s, the New York COMEX, which is run from the CME out of Chicago, in conjunction with the LBMA banks in London, have created exchanges for the leverage and sale and pricing of gold and silver based on very small amounts of actual physical gold and silver and massive amounts of paper claims on that silver. In other words, a lot of paper leverage and very little physical gold. And that allowed for decades of legalized price fixing by the COMEX, where a handful of about 8 banks could wake up every morning, lever a bunch of shorts against the gold price, and keep gold and silver artificially repressed. There was no real price discovery because the paper market just suffocated it every day. That was very deliberate because gold at that time was the enemy to the dollar. It called the bluff on paper money. And so for most of my adult life and even my young life, this game of artificial price repression, artificial price fixing, legalized price fixing by the CMA and the COMEX was allowed. China, of course, saw this. They knew this game. They saw this game. And for many decades, that was allowed because gold was off the radar. Now, as gold becomes more important, there's more desire for physical gold. Counterparties are taking their gold off of these exchanges in London and New York, and they want fair price discovery based on supply and demand of the physical metals. And what is happening is Shanghai and Hong Kong have created a settlement and clearing system that's based more on physical properties, not paper properties. Again, that may sound academic, but the decades of price fixing gold and silver are getting weaker and weaker. The ability of New York and Chicago and London to artificially fix gold and silver is getting weaker and weaker because the flow of physical gold and the flow of trust in paper money to physical gold is moving from west to east. And they're doing exactly what I would do. They're being patient. They're going to create a new exchange. They're going to have physical properties. You can't have a 200-day moving average in Hong Kong for gold that's totally different than the one in New York. New York can no longer allow themselves to price fix if there's a much higher price in the east. The world will go to that more fairly priced exchange. And the timing is no coincidence. China is accumulating gold in a fire sale after the COMEX price fixed gold and silver down in February and January this year on Black Friday. They're stacking it on a fire sale. The banks are stacking it. Well, retail investors are shaken out like they always are. So the big banks can acquire it on cheap. And then China is now going to use gold more for trade, and they're also going to create an exchange where it's more fairly priced. It doesn't mean gold goes to $8,000 tomorrow. I'm just saying that is the direction of the golden hockey puck. You play the direction, not where it lies on the ice right now. And China is setting itself up very patiently for a new monetary system where gold isn't just a pet rock, but a core piece of collateral, and they're going to price it more fairly, based on physical supply and demand rather than paper claims. And that's a watershed moment for the gold market.
For decades, Western commodity exchanges suppressed precious metals through massive synthetic leverage, trading astronomical volumes of paper contracts against negligible physical inventories. This institutional setup enabled major bullion banks to maintain concentrated short positions, subduing organic price discovery to protect the perceived stability of fiat currencies. However, this pricing monopoly is rapidly unraveling as institutional liquidity shifts toward physical first Asian markets. Dedicated clearing hubs across Shanghai and Hong Kong settle transactions exclusively through allocated physical bars rather than unbacked derivative claims. As international participants drain physical inventory from London and New York vaults, genuine supply and demand will dictate real-world valuations, establishing physical gold as the neutral settlement asset for global commerce. Now, let's get back to the interview.
If they don't call it QE, you just have to look at the Fed's balance sheet and you can see that the asset side is going up. When the dot-com bubble topped in 2000, that was around the time gold bottomed, 99, like a double bottom, 99, 2001.
Yep.
Yeah, I want to move over to Japan because you mentioned Japan early, but can we go over the carry trade?
Sure.
And the leverage it creates and what the reverse of the carry trade would mean to the financial markets.
Yeah, and again, many listening will know what the Japanese carry trade is, and many are new to it. And I'll try and keep it simple because it's important, and it ultimately is very simple. But for decades, the yield on the Japanese JGB, their version of our treasury, the yield on the Japanese bond was 0 to negative when inflation adjusted. And that meant the cost of borrowing was very cheap for yen for decades. And the shadow banking system, which are the hedge funds, and certainly even corporate America and corporate other large corporations around the world, would go to the Japanese banks, the Japanese lenders, and take out a loan in yen for effectively nothing, and then convert that yen on a swap into US dollars, and then invest in the stock market. So it was free money to invest and lever into the stock market. And for decades, that was kind of one big prop desk out of Japan for the financialization of assets using really cheap cost of borrowing. And so that worked for many, many years. In August of 2024, for a period of 10 days, the Japanese tried to raise their rates 25 basis points to support their yen. And that caused the first panic in the Japanese carry trade a couple years ago. Japan blinked, and then they went back to trying to compress those yields and those rates, and the carry trade continued. What happened this summer is we saw the first kind of hints that this was no longer just temporary. The yen reached its weakest level against the US dollar in 40 years. And the yen was really starting to fall because of so many years of QE and debt and currency debasement. So its Japanese finance minister, of which there have been many, tried to throw 80 to 90 billion to prop the yen, and that wasn't enough. And then they raised rates to 1% in June, again, after being at 0 to 30 for years. That was the highest rate hike since the 1990s. So even that simple 1% change in the Japanese yield in the Japanese Bank of Japan was enough to throw the carry trade into a panic, because when you're leveraging hundreds of millions of dollars and interest rates go up and the yen strengthens even a small amount, that has a massive ripple effect on the investment. And so there's a massive sell-off. And the other thing that's happened, because the yen is so weak, the carry trade is over, but because the yen was so weak versus the dollar, the Japanese investors have decided to bring their money back to Japan. What better time to convert their yen, their US stocks back into yen when the dollar is strong, the market is strong, and so they're going to sell their stocks, they're going to sell their US treasuries and bring it home to Japan for good. Now, Japan has been our largest foreign holder of US treasuries, and now they're dumping those treasuries. That means our bonds are falling in price and our yields, those shark fins, are going up. It also explains why the NASDAQ in July saw its worst returns in years. This flow of money, of Japanese money, out of the US stock market, out of the US bond market, is more than just a signal of a carry trade ending. It's a massive flow of foreign money leaving the US markets for a number of reasons. But if I were a Japanese citizen and my currency was that weak and I had assets in the S&P that was at an all-time high, it would be the perfect time for me as well to convert, to sell those stocks, sell those treasuries, and buy a lot of yen on sale. It's the biggest sale price in 4 decades. So this is a massive flow out of the US markets, both credit and equity, both bond and stock. And those have ripple effects on our markets, which are overvalued by every metric. And again, not here to time when or how that market mean reverts. I mean, you could effectively keep it alive forever by printing trillions of dollars to prop it. But we're seeing real cracks in the US stock market, real cracks in the open AI, or the AI will save us meme.
A profound shockwave is rippling across global financial systems as the multi-decade Japanese yen carry trade systematically unwinds. For generations, international hedge funds and major corporations borrowed ultra-cheap yen to aggressively leverage into overvalued US equities and sovereign debt instruments. That entire speculative architecture fractured when the Bank of Japan implemented historic interest rate hikes, triggering forced margin adjustments across cross-border portfolios. With the yen trading near multi-decade lows against the dollar, Japanese institutional allocators are liquidating massive holdings of US treasuries and equities to repatriate capital back home. This foreign capital exodus is sending treasury bond prices tumbling. To prevent systemic market paralysis, central monetary authorities will ultimately resort to printing trillions in emergency balance sheet liquidity. This inevitable currency expansion will accelerate fiat debasement, cementing the broad migration of institutional capital into tangible, unencumbered hard assets. If this gave you value, smash that like button, share it with those paying attention, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Stay alert, stay prepared, and keep stacking tangible assets.